he has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
You ever had somebody start telling a story about you and you could feel right up front that it's getting under your skin? It's kind of making you a little frustrated, a little angry. Maybe the story's not even true. But just the fact that they're telling the story and you can hear it and you know others are reacting to it, it's really starting to ruffle your feathers. Well, guard your feathers. Or as they might say in Great Britain, mind the feathers, mind the gap. Don't fall into the space between the train and the train tracks, between the train and the dock, because there's a gap there. Something about your story told by somebody else in a bad way, well, it can get under your skin really fast. But let me tell you something. The story you're telling that's getting under the enemy's skin, that's the one you should be working on. That's the story you should be rehearsing and practicing and researching. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And I know at some time, especially if you've grown up with siblings or cousins that were close by, or you grew up in a tight-knit neighborhood where all the kids would play together on the same street, and then you eventually end up at one person's house, and the parents were always kind of lurking in the background, paying attention to what was going on. I know it was the case when I was a kid. We all ended up at my house, and my mom would sit at the table crocheting like she wasn't paying any attention. And then later I would hear her on the phone with so-and-so's parents. And that was always a warning sign. What's the warning sign? Well, the warning sign is that there's always somebody listening. Today, it's probably not parents as much, but it's your devices. It's your cell phone. It's your laptop. It's your iPad. It's the traffic light that's watching everything and taking pictures, and you didn't realize that. In many countries, Great Britain is one of them, China is another, and there are more, where facial recognition is a positive form of ID. And facial recognition can be used off of a street camera at the corner where you crossed over from the bakery to the ATM as evidence that you are guilty of something, whether you've actually done it or not. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they saw your face, and they can identify you positively as the one who was there at the time, and that's enough to bring you before the court. See, the story that your enemy tells that gets under your skin, that's the one they're going to be rehearsing. That's the one they're going to be coming after you with all they've got. And sometimes what they're rehearsing is the list of conspiracies that go along with it. You don't think I'm kidding. There are people who are in prison right now over an event that happened in January of 2021. They have not yet been to court. They have not yet faced a jury of their peers. Many of them have not actually even been charged with a crime, but because they're so suspicious and apparently possibly dangerous, they have been held without conversation and held without bail and held without opportunity to justify themselves because their cell phone pinged a tower in a certain proximity on a certain day. The story that's being told about them may have zero relationship to truth, but it fits a narrative. And that narrative is very conducive to controlling the behavior of others. If they have you fearful enough that just by watching your face on the cameras and your phone on the towers, they can tell where you were and therefore predetermine what your intent might be, then the story they're going to tell the legal minds that want to pursue you will be different, perhaps, than the truth. But that's not the worst story. See, the worst story is the one that looks to your friends and neighbors like, wow, I could have never imagined that. I would have never thought my friend XYZ would actually live like that or behave like that or do those things. I can't believe it. That's mind-boggling to me. And yet the evidence will seem overwhelming. It will seem as if you've gone off the deep end. You've lost your well-being. You've lost your attachment to life. And it may not be true, but all the evidence seems to point that way. The story that they're telling is well rehearsed. I was watching a podcast this morning. I watched a couple of them before I came on my own. And one of the podcasts that I was watching, there was a very heated conversation. Patrick Bet-David, the PBD podcast, I believe is the name of it, had a guest on by the name of Anthony Weiner. Now, Anthony's been in politics for a long time. He's a podcaster in his own right, has his own radio show and his own social media tools as well. And he's been very well connected in politics for at least 3 decades. And there are a lot of stories told about Anthony because of his behavior, because of his connections, because of his friends. But the stories that are told that Patrick chose to bring up, and there were a lot of them, really began to frustrate his guest. There were accusations. There were conspiracies. There were some acknowledged. There's probably not any truth to that. I don't even want to go there. It's just of all the things that I researched when I asked you to be a guest, this is one of the things I found, and I thought it was interesting. Do you want to explain why that might be out there, whether it's true or otherwise? What was the origin of it? And you know as well as I do, if you've been in politics or you've been in the public life for any period of time, people are going to make up stories about you, and they don't have to be true. In fact, they can be made up from what we would call whole cloth, meaning the entire thing was someone else's imagination. It had nothing to do with truth. It had no reality in it at all. But if you look at certain fact checkers, for an example, on Facebook, I shared something just yesterday, and today I got the Facebook alert that it was fact checked. What they consider fact-checked versus truth is a very thin line, and sometimes the fact-check itself is an opinion that has no basis in truth or fact. It's just that they don't like the fact that you're sharing, so if they fact-check it, they can throttle your channel and make sure that nobody else hears your voice or what you have to say. So mind the feathers, you're going to get your feathers ruffled. But I'm going to tell you the truth. There are a lot of people out there who have stories that are being told about them that are completely made up. Tim Ballard was a great guy in 2014. He was a good guy in 2015. He was a little questionable in 2017, and then he's an absolute monster in 2023. What changed? The people on the other side of the story that he's telling. See, in 2014, he was a hero for rescuing kids out of Colombia who'd been trafficked and enslaved in the sex trade. In 2015, he was still at the top of the news, and people knew what he was doing, and most people agreed with it. In 2017, though, he sat down with the Orange Man, and that kind of didn't bode well for him. And by 2023, a film about his life has been made, and from AMC theaters to the local conversation in the coffee shops, there are people who have been so polarized by the reality of his story, it's mind-numbing. It really is. There are people that you would honestly look at and go, how can you not be in support of a film that helps to rescue children from sex slavery? And simultaneously, there are people who are just irate that you're even talking about it. That's the part that I just have to scratch my head at and think, how do you get to the place where you're embarrassed to talk about something that nobody really should be involved in? Oh, but then we have those who want to legalize such behavior as would necessitate a sex slave trade of children. We don't want to call them by that illegal name anymore. We want to call them minor attracted persons. It's the story that you're telling that pisses off your enemy that you need to be rehearsing the best. And rehearse, I don't just mean keep telling it over and over. While you may have to do that, you better get your facts straight. You better dig deep into the reality. You should know that if you're telling a story and people are pushing back on that story, if you're bucking the narrative with the story that you're telling and other people are getting really upset about the story that you're telling, you need to dig a little deeper. There's a reason that what you said has provoked such a response. It may be that what you've come across is untrue information and you're telling it riles people up because it's also unfair. It might be, though, that what you're telling is revealing something they've been trying to hide. And the fact that you have the veracity to say it, the guts, the cojones to actually say it in public, on a podcast, in an interview, around a coffee table with friends, the fact that you will speak those things out loud. How dare you? Or, how dare you? As Greta would say. But see, there's a whole lot of conspiracy theories, or maybe we should call them spoiler alerts, that are being brought to light. And it's easy to slap a label on them. Fact check! Conspiracy theory! It's not true! And yet the more research you do and the more you talk about it, the more you find that there are dozens, hundreds, thousands, millions of people who can confirm the story that you've heard. It actually is true. But suppressing that truth, well, did you know that there was a movie made in the 50s by Charlie Chaplin? It was called The Dictator. Actually, it was made before the 50s. 1958 was the last time it was released in good standing, but it was made about a gentleman named Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler banned the viewing of the movie. It would cost you dearly if you watched that movie, or if you were the clown who made it available for people to watch in all of Germany. And then in every nation that he conquered, he also banned that movie. When he got his own private viewing copy of it, he watched it more than one time. But he never made a public comment on it. It was 1958 that Charlie Chaplin finally said, I wish I knew what he thought of the film. But I don't know that he'll ever know. Here's what I do know. When what you have to say is so close to the truth that it terrifies your enemy and they want to silence you, double down. Figure out what it is that you said that provoked them and why your opponent is terrified of your story. Do more research. Do your homework. Know what you're talking about. But don't stop talking. There's a reason that story has them irritated, ruffled, and running scared. And now's the time to hold on to that story. Keep telling it. Amp up the volume. Tell it again. And that's why Sound of Freedom has topped $100 million in theater sales. Even with the inconvenient truth that some places they've turned off the AC, others have had backed up toilets, others have had every other theater working properly in the building except that one showing of the film where the lights won't go off for some reason. It's an inconvenient truth. Is it a conspiracy theory? Is it a spoiler alert? If the story you're telling is getting under the skin of your enemy, if it's ruffling the feathers of your enemy, mind the feathers and carry on. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.
Thank you.